The frozen streets of Milwaukee glittered under the weak December sun, the pavement slick with black ice where salt trucks hadn't reached. In the shadow of a boarded-up laundromat, a small figure huddled beneath a broken awning where plastic strips flapped like ghostly fingers in the wind. 8-year-old Jamie Carter exhaled slowly, watching their breath curl upward before vanishing. Their oversized jacket, salvaged from a church donation bin, smelled of mothballs and someone else's sweat. The left pocket hung by threads and the zipper caught every third tooth, but it held the last treasure from before. A knit hat with unraveling reindeer along the brim, the only thing that still smelled like Mom. Across the alley, something stirred beneath a collapsed cardboard box. Jamie froze, pressing deeper into the doorway. The shelters near River West weren't safe after dark, not since those older kids started patrolling with switchblades and hungry eyes. But the sound came again, not the skitter of rats or the crunch of broken glass under boots. A whimper. The kind that hooks beneath your ribs and pulls. Jamie crept forward, knees protesting from 3 nights sleeping on concrete. The box shifted, revealing a flash of reddish fur matted with ice. A dog. Not one of those yappy strays that haunted the dumpsters, but a big animal, or what remained of one. Its ribs pressed against its coat like ladder rungs, and one ear hung torn at the tip. When it lifted its head, Jamie saw the left eye was milk blue with blindness. The dog didn't growl as Jamie knelt. Up close they could see the wound, a gash along its shoulder crusted with frozen blood and dirt. Someone had kicked this animal. Art. Jamie's throat tightened, remembering the social worker's shiny shoes stepping over them in the group home hallway. "Hey," Jamie whispered, voice rusty from disuse. The dog's tail thumped once. Its nose was dry and cracked as autumn leaves when Jamie brushed it with their fingertips. The reindeer hat came off in one stiff motion. Jamie wound it around the dog's neck like a scarf, fingers lingering in the matted fur. A name rose unbidden, Ghost. For the way its breath fogged in the air, for how the world had tried to erase them both. By midnight the temperature plunged. Jamie curled around Ghost behind the laundromat's boiler vent, sharing body heat as the wind howled through the chain-link fence. The dog's heartbeat against their chest became a lullaby, steady, alive. When Jamie's eyelids grew heavy, Ghost nosed their cheek until they stirred. No one had kept Jamie awake since Mom used to sing through the night shifts. At dawn they found the abandoned delivery van near the train tracks. Rust had eaten through the back doors, but the interior smelled only of old newspapers and dust. Jamie cleared space between crumpled packing slips while Ghost sniffed each corner, his limp more pronounced in the cold. They shared a stolen granola bar, Jamie spitting out the raisins they'd always hated into their palm for Ghost to lick up. "You're a weird dog," Jamie murmured as Ghost sneezed at the crumbs. The sound of their own laugh startled them, a cracked, unfamiliar thing. Ghost's good eye gleamed in response as if he'd been waiting to hear it. Over the next week, patterns formed. Mornings were for scavenging. Day-old bagels behind the bakery, warm spots near the library vents where office workers smoked. Afternoons, Jamie taught Ghost to weave through the skate park's concrete waves, avoiding the older kids who threw bottles at strays. Nights were for stories whispered into black fur, about Mom's pancakes shaped like elephants, about the way she'd hum old rock songs while braiding Jamie's hair. Ghost began to change. His coat regained some luster where Jamie brushed out burrs with their fingers. The limp faded to a slight hitch when he trotted ahead to scout alleys. But it was his gaze that unsettled passers-by, that one clear eye seeming to weigh souls as they hurried past. The first snowstorm caught them unprepared. Jamie woke to white pressing against the van's cracked windows, Ghost's whines blending with the wind. Their fingers turned waxy and pale as they fumbled with the broken door handle. Ghost shoved past, knocking Jamie into the drift, then stood over them barking toward the street, a sound Jamie had never heard from him. Tires crunched through slush. A door slammed. "Jesus Christ, kid. Hey kid." Jamie blinked up at a woman in a quilted flannel jacket, her gray braid whipping in the wind. Behind her, an idling tow truck's light bar painted the snow orange. The woman, Marnie as they'd learn, didn't ask questions. She hauled them both into the truck's cab, cranked the heat, and drove straight past the county shelter to a clapboard house near the harbor. The living room smelled of cedar and bacon grease. A tabby cat hissed from the sofa as Ghost shook snow onto the braided rug. "You're staying," Marnie said, handing Jamie a mug of cocoa so sweet it made their teeth ache. "At least till that mutt's paw heals." She nodded to where Ghost licked at a raw patch between his toes, an injury Jamie hadn't noticed. That night, wrapped in a borrowed Packers blanket, Jamie listened to Marnie argue on the phone with someone from social services. "Like hell I'm dumping them back in the system. No, I don't care about the paperwork. Yeah, well, Judge Wilkins still owes me for his Impala's transmission. Ghost snuffled at Jamie's ear as the voices rose. His breath smelled of the steak bits Marnie had slipped him under the table. Jamie pressed their face into his neck, counting heartbeats until dawn. Marnie's house became an island of strange comforts. A closet full of her grandson's outgrown clothes, a backyard where Ghost could run without flinching at shouts, Saturday mornings watching fishing boats glide past while eating pancakes, no elephant shapes, but extra syrup to compensate. But the nightmare still came. Flames licking the apartment walls. The scream of bending metal. Waking to find Ghost's weight across their legs, his muzzle resting on their chest until their breathing slowed. One March morning, Jamie found Marnie crying over the newspaper. A photo of a young firefighter stared up from the obituaries, her grandson, the clothes donor. Ghost nudged the woman's hand until her fingers uncurled to stroke his ears. Jamie, who hadn't touched another person since Mom, brought her the half-knit scarf from the basket by the recliner. "Show me how," they asked, holding out the yarn. Marnie's calloused hands guided theirs, and Ghost settled at their feet, watching the dance of needles with his head cocked. When the social worker finally came, a tired man with a binder full of forms, Jamie hid in the tool shed. Ghost stood guard at the door, growling low in his throat until Marnie shouted, "For God's sake, Ray, can't you see they're home?" The man left with unsigned papers. That evening, Marnie hung a second stocking at Christmas, though it was April. Ghost got a rawhide bone shaped like a candy cane. Jamie got a key on a yarn loop, still warm from Marnie's pocket. Summer brought dock spiders and fireflies. Jamie learned to patch drywall and scale fish, their hands growing brown and capable. Ghost grew sleek on table scraps, though he still woke trembling from dreams only Jamie understood. Some nights, they'd lead him down to the pier, where the lapping water drowned the sounds of sirens in their memory. On Jamie's 10th birthday, Marnie took them to the animal shelter where Ghost's microchip had been traced. The facility had closed after funding cuts, his records lost in a flood. The volunteers shrugged when asked about Ghost's past. Maybe search and rescue? That limp looks like an old break. He's got the bearing. Jamie didn't need records. They knew Ghost's history in the way he still winced at raised voices, how he'd nosed Jamie's wrist when their thoughts grew too loud. Knew it in the matching scars, his torn ear, the burn stripe down Jamie's left arm. That winter, when Marnie's arthritis kept her indoors, Jamie and Ghost delivered her famous pepper jelly to neighbors. The widow Wu always saved bacon for Ghost, pretending not to notice when Jamie pocketed extra almond cookies. Old Mr. Hendricks let them read his National Geographics by the pot-bellied stove, though Jamie had to sound out the longer words. One evening, as sleet tapped the windows, Marnie set down her knitting. "You remind me of him, you know. My boy." Her gnarled fingers touched the photo on the side table, a grinning man holding up a trout. Same stubborn chin. Jamie felt something crack open in their chest, warm as the embers in the wood stove. Ghost rested his head on their foot, his blind eye reflecting the flames. By spring the nightmares came less often. Jamie's voice returned in fragments, jokes with Marnie at breakfast, reading aloud to Ghost from library books. They still startled at slamming doors, still traced their scar when stressed. But now Ghost would press against them, solid as bedrock, until the memories receded. On the anniversary of their arrival, Marnie took them to the harbor's edge at dawn. The lake stretched smooth as glass, pink with first light. Ghost bounded ahead, his coat gone gold with health, chasing gulls along the breakwall. "Look at you two," Marnie said, squeezing Jamie's shoulder. "Like you were always meant to find each other." Jamie watched Ghost pause to sniff a tide pool, his tail wagging in the salt wind. Somewhere beneath the layers of hurt and hunger, beneath the years of being unseen, a truth took root. Love wasn't something you earned. It was something that found you, in a snowdrift, in a stranger's kitchen, in the steady gaze of a broken creature who recognized your cracks. Ghost barked at a crab, then trotted back to nudge Jamie's hand with his wet nose. The reindeer hat, now more darn than original yarn, stayed tucked in their shared bed. But Jamie didn't need it anymore. They had this, the three of them against the rising sun, breathing in sync, whole.